for this practice, you won't need any materials. All you'll need is your mat and your body. So we're going to start today in a child's pose with your knees wide and your big toes to touch. Extend your arms in front of you and rest your forehead on the mat. Take a deep breath in through your nose and open your mouth to exhale. Inhale through your nose and open your mouth to exhale. One more time. Inhale through your nose and open your mouth, exhale. Now start to take your breaths in and out through your nose. When we start in child's pose, it's giving us an opportunity to right away get into our first fold, into our hip crease. Your hip crease is the biggest fold in your body. It's the most important fold in your body because it's connecting your top and your bottom, these two major parts of yourself. It's kind of like a mediation point too, between above and below. Let's take a couple more rounds of breath here, letting everything go from the past. Everything in the past is behind you. Letting everything go that's in the future, everything that comes in the rest of today, the rest of this week, the rest of this month and year. And find yourself in the midpoint between the past and the future, which is the present moment. We're going to walk our fingertips a little bit further forward to the top of our mat and lift our forehead up so that we're looking forward. We're seeing where we're going. And then we're going to walk our hands over towards 10 o'clock. So we're going to walk your fingertips over towards the left. Stay up on your fingertips. Keep looking forward. Keep your vision forward. And your hips have stayed east and west, 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. So they're really nicely stable. You're keeping your first floor, your floor of stability, nice and grounded. And then you're just moving your floor of ability. So now we're going to move our hands through center in a big arc over towards the right, towards 2 o'clock. And you'll look over towards 2 o'clock. You'll find length through the left side of your body this time. Your hips are still nicely leveled at east and west. And you're just shifting where your vision is, where your second floor, floor of ability, is going. And then you'll come back to center, making a big arc again. And release your hands down towards the mat. Release your forehead. You're back in your child's pose just for a moment. And then we're going to shift forward into tabletop. So you'll lift your hips up and you'll walk your hands back so that your wrists are directly underneath your shoulders and your knees are underneath your hips. So sometimes we use external materials like a block here to measure, but today we're just using the tools that we have in our body. So we can measure out shoulder distance apart with our hands by swiveling our hands until our fingers are facing the other fingers. So your middle fingers will be touching in the middle of your mat. And then you're going to pivot on the heels of your hands so that your fingers are facing forward again. And now you're shoulder distance apart. And one thing I always like to do is just to notice, were my hands a little wider or were they a little narrower than I thought they needed to be? And that just gives you a little bit more information. And then you want your knees to be hip distance apart, which there isn't quite as easy of a way to measure that, but you can look back for a second and also start to notice how it feels when they're a little too wide or a little too narrow. And then you're going to look forward and we're going to start to take some cat-cows. So on your inhale, you're going to round your spine and tuck your chin to your chest. And as you exhale, you'll curve your back and look up. So you'll inhale to round and you'll exhale to curve. And you'll keep going and we'll start to accelerate this motion and accelerate our breathing as we do that. And that's going to create more and more heat in our body. And this whole time, you want to make sure that the tops of your feet are planted down into the mat. Those are like your anchors. They're what keep you stable and steady in your lower body while you're in your tabletop, while you're going through your cat-cow. And it can be tempting, especially when we round our spine, to kind of shift our right back into our past. And what we want to do is continue to think about going forward. So a lot of us get kind of stuck in our past, or just get stuck in the what ifs, or can I do it? I don't know. Maybe we get trapped in our head. But sometimes we just need to take that step forward. We need to continue to feel the forward motion that is possible in the universe and really harness that. And as you continue to go back and forth through your cat-cow, start to go faster and faster and faster. And make sure that you are pressing into the knuckles of your hands, not just the heels of your hands or the base of your hand. And that will help you keep your weight forward as well. So just take it about 5 more times back and forth. And then on your next inhale, round your spine. And as you exhale, curve and look forward. And then we're going to bring our right knee to the middle of our mat and our left knee behind the right. And then you're going to bring your feet as wide as your mat. So we're crossing our legs here to find a little bit of a boundary. And once you've done that, measure out your shoulder distance apart again with your hands to make sure that they're still where they need to be. Make sure your feet are as wide as your mat. A lot of times we can kind of cheat on this and bring our feet a little bit too close together, but we won't have as much stability if we do that. And once you have that, you can flip your palms 180 degrees so that your fingers are facing back towards your knees. We do a lot of wrist work in Katonah Yoga because our wrists are necks. So a lot of us have a lot of tension in our neck just because of the way we sit so much and being on technology so much. And so it can really help to flush out our wrists, but it also helps just our wrists, because a lot of times if we're typing or we're texting, that can get tiring on our wrist joints. So once you have all of this, we're going to start to take our hips in the clockwise direction. So this is a really localized movement, although other parts of our bodies will of course move. But you do want to try to keep your feet nice and planted, your knees one tucked into the other. This time it's the left tucked into the right. And make sure that you're not hyperextending your elbows. So you'll want to have a little bend in your elbows, and as you do that, you can find more distance from one end of your collarbone to the other by thinking about your left shoulder going out to the left and your right shoulder going out to the right. And this whole time your gaze is slightly forward. You don't have to be looking like 10 feet in front of you, but even just looking towards the top of your mat is great, because really our bodies are like cars. We are the car, we're the driver of the car, and we're also the passenger in the car. And so when you're driving the car especially, it's so important to look forward, because if you're not looking where you're going, you're likely going to crash into something. So it's important to always know where you're going, right in front of you, what's right up ahead, but also to have a destination in mind. So our destination, we always talk about in Katonah Yoga, our destination is at 2 o'clock. So it's in front of us and a little bit to the right. So if you imagine yourself on a clock face here, and you imagine your hips on a clock face, what hours is it a little hard to get to? What numbers on the clock is it challenging to get around? And start to whip it up a little bit faster. So keep going and going and going. Now it's like you're whipping up some vegan coconut whipped cream. I love coconut whipped cream. I love to think of that, vision that as I'm swiveling my hips here. And then you'll come back to center. You'll flip your hands so that your fingers are facing forward again. And you're going to bring your pubis, your navel, and your sternum forward as you lift your hands up off the mat. And you'll inhale to reach your arms up overhead and grab onto opposite elbows. So we're standing up on our knees here. And what's lovely is that we have a tripod in our base. So we're really making a triangle, which is the most stable of all shapes. And so we have our 2 feet as wide as our mat. We have our knees together. You're always thinking about this back bend coming from your legs, your knees even, but especially your pubis as well. So pubis, navel, sternum are coming forward and up, kind of like in a big arc. Inhale to reach your arms back up, interlace your hands, and make a cradle with your neck or your head. Your elbows will be shoulder distance apart. Your gaze can be straight up towards the sky, and this is helping you find an even deeper back bend here. Make sure that your elbows stay close enough, but not too wide, so you're really thinking about shoulder distance. Inhale to reach your arms back up, and exhale to release your hands down towards your mat. We're going to step it into a plank pose right away. So your hands go forward, your feet go back. Hands are shoulder distance, feet are hip distance. You'll inhale to look forward. And as you exhale, you'll send your hips high. So here we are in a down dog with crossed legs. And the reason we're crossing our legs so much in this practice today is because we're making our way towards a sun salutation. And our sun salutations involve crossing our legs quite a bit, especially in our down dog and our up dog. So in your first down dog here, make sure that your heels are lifted, your knees are bent, and your gaze is slightly forward. You're constantly rotating your armpits towards your heart or externally rotating your shoulders. And you want to make sure you're pressing into the knuckles of your hands. And then on an inhale, shift forward to plank pose with your crossed legs. As you exhale, send your hips high. Inhale to your plank, don't drop your hips too low, and exhale back to your dog. Inhale to plank, and exhale to your dog. Inhale to your plank, and back to your dog, and just keep it going. Take it about 5 more times. The faster you go, sometimes the more you're able to just get into your hip joints and shoulder joints and not muscle this as much. And after the 5th time, we'll meet back in downward dog. And you're going to inhale to your up dog. So you're going to come through your plank, but then drop your hips a little bit lower. When you're in your up dog, you can really think about finding space through the front of your chest and looking forward. Think about each of your shoulders going in their own direction. And then on an exhale, send your hips high back to your down dog. You'll inhale to your up dog. You'll exhale to your down dog. And you just keep going back and forth, getting into your joint space. So one of the lovely parts about Katonah Yoga is it's so much about the joints. And when we really can find more space and more movement, more range of motion in our joints, that's really what's going to help keep our body young and healthy. And it's going to make it easier to move as we get older and older. So we'll meet back in down dog after your last round here. And we're just going to stay here for a couple rounds of breath as you notice if any of that movement has helped you find a little bit more space here in your hip crease. And then we're going to walk our hands back towards our feet. So you're going to walk your hands to the back of your mat, and we're going to stay here in a fold just for a moment. Your right heel will be a little bit higher lifted. Your left heel will be planted on the mat. And this is just to help you keep the cross of your leg. Make sure that you're bending your knees enough that your belly can rest on your thighs and you can release your head and neck fully. I like to grab onto opposite elbows here, but you can also just keep your hands down on the mat for a little extra support. And then we're going to walk to the left and circle around ourselves until we've crossed the opposite leg in front. So you walk all the way around to the left, to the left, to the left, until your left leg is now in front of your right. So now your left heel is going to be a little bit higher lifted than your right. Your knees will still be bent. Your belly and thighs are touching, making contact. You've released your head, your neck. Your hands can reach for opposite elbows, or you can keep them dangling down. And then we're going to walk our hands forward. So you're going to come back into a down dog just for a moment on this side with this left leg crossed in front of your right. But then right away, you're going to drop your knees down to your mat and you're going to come into this cross-legged tabletop. So this time your left leg is in front, right knee is tucked behind your left, your feet are as wide as your mat. And we have a couple options for hand variations here. You can keep your fingers facing forward. You can flip your palms 180 degrees like you did on the other side, or you can interlace your fingers and press your palms straight down into the mat. There's some other variations here where you could flip your palms and press the tops of your hands into the mat, or even flip them again. So if that's a variation that you've tried and you want to practice today, go for it. Once you've picked your hand variation, we're going to start rotating our hips in the counterclockwise direction. So this time we're going from 12 o'clock to 9 o'clock to 6 o'clock to 3 o'clock. If you want to think about it as a clock, you could also think about it as the spin of baseball because they do run counterclockwise. Wonder if you've ever thought, why do they do that? I have always known that that's what they do, but I've actually never thought of the reasoning behind, and I wonder kind of who came up with that or what was the origin of that. I'm not sure, but that would be an interesting thing to think about. Anytime we do choose a certain direction for something to go, there is a purpose, there is a reason behind it. Even if we don't realize it, there might be some subconscious, unconscious thing that's going on that we're kind of projecting out in the choices that we make. Another fun thing to notice here as we're circling our hips is that we've really created a third hand and a third foot by connecting our two arms together, if you've taken that variation, and by connecting our legs together and creating this boundary. So this reminds us that two things, when we add them together, 1 + 1 doesn't always equal 2. 1 + 1 could equal an entirely new third thing. So that's like red and yellow, that creates orange. Or that's like a man and a woman, they can create a baby. It's not just that it creates two. I mean, it can just create a couple, but they can also create something completely new. So start to whip it up. That coconut whipped cream is back in action. You're taking it on this side as well. Just 2 more breaths here. And then you'll come back to stillness. Whichever hand variation you've taken, just make sure you undo it so that your fingers are facing forward again. And then you're going to start to bring pubis, navel, and sternum forward, which will force you to lift your hands up off of the mat. Inhale to reach your arms up overhead. Grab onto opposite elbows. Try to bring the opposite arm in front this time. And slightly lift your chin. And try to make it so that your biceps are right by your ears. So a lot of times if we have some tightness in our shoulders here, it can be really tempting to kind of jot our neck forward, our head forward, but try to keep everything just in a nice long line. Of course, you're going to have a bit of a curve here in your back, but you want it to be a nice arc, not with anything randomly jotting out in any specific direction. So on your inhale, reach your arms up, create a cradle with your hands by interlacing your fingers and placing them behind your head and neck. Bring your elbows a little closer together so that they're shoulder distance apart, and notice if you have a tendency to bring them too close or too far. And then inhale to reach your arms back up. Exhale to place your hands on your mat and step into plank. So your hands go a little forward, your feet go a little back. Make sure you've lifted your hips high enough so that there's one nice long line from your heels to your hips to your shoulders to the top of your head. Take an inhale breath as you look forward, and exhale to your downward facing dog. So now you're taking your down dog with the opposite leg crossed in front. Your gaze is slightly forward, your knees are still bent, your heels are lifted. And when you bring your gaze forward, you're really creating an equilateral triangle from both heels of your hands to wherever your gaze is. So that's how you can kind of measure out where you should be looking. So on an inhale, you'll shift forward to your plank with crossed legs. And as you exhale, send your hips high to down dog. Inhale to your plank. And exhale to your down dog. Inhale to plank. And exhale to down dog. And keep going back and forth. The faster you go, the more you'll get into your joints. Take it a couple more times. Every inhale brings you forward. Every exhale brings you back. Make sure that you're still pressing into the knuckles of your hands. And then we'll meet back in downward facing dog. On your next breath in, you're going to go to up dog. So you'll come all the way through your plank. This time your hips will go a little bit lower, but they won't go too low. You'll want to bring them just as low as they would need to be so that they would just touch a block on medium height. And then as you exhale, you'll send your hips high to your downward facing dog. Your inhale is to your up dog. Your exhale is to down dog. So you'll go back and forth between your up dog and your down dog. And I really encourage you to try to connect your breath here. Every inhale going forward, every exhale going back. It can be tricky if we've done that in a different way or if we haven't connected our breath in the past in this motion, but it really adds a lot to the posture. And since we are keeping things pretty bent and we don't have anything super straight or strict in how we're moving, the energy is able to flow really nicely. So let's meet back in downward facing dog, hips high, knees bent. Couple rounds of breath here. And then we're going to drop our knees to the mat. We're going to uncross our legs so that we're in a tabletop again. And we're going to sit down into child's pose. So bring your knees as wide as your mat, your big toes to touch. Let your hips sit back, your forehead release down, and then plant your palms into the mat actively. So you don't need to be on the tips of your fingers this time. But just keep your hands shoulder distance apart and feel yourself pressing them down into the mat a little bit as you rotate your armpits towards your heart. Nice job. So on your inhale, we're going to come back into tabletop. And as you exhale, we're going to make our way to down dog. So you might have to come through plank here to measure it out. Our plank is always the length of our down dog. And then on an exhale, you'll send your hips high, you'll bend your knees, your heels will be slightly lifted. This is our first down dog of practice without any crossing. So it might feel a little bit different, and it might feel easier than a down dog normally feels, or it may feel really weird because sometimes when we do have a boundary and then we take the boundary away, it just feels like there's a lot to be dealing with. So just notice what's coming up for you with that. Wherever you are, you want to think about your butt bones kind of going straight up towards the sky. The more you lift your heels, the more your butt will lift. But we do want to end up finding as much length in our legs as we can while keeping a bend in our knees. So you're always thinking about your butt and your heels going in opposite directions. And that's how you'll find more length in the back of your legs. And then you're going to look forward on your inhale breath. And as you exhale, you're going to step your right foot forward to a 90-degree angle. And what can really help when you're stepping forward to 90 degrees is looking forward. So that's why I have you inhale and look forward first, because a lot of times if we're looking back, we aren't going to be able to get as far as we want to in life. So if we're always looking back into our past, how could we expect that we'd be able to get forward into a future goal? So try to find contact between your right knee and your right armpit. Bring your hands into the shape of a V, kind of walking them out and forward a bit. And then drop your back knee and untuck your toes. And before we do anything here in this lunge, let's get into our right armpit a little bit. So you can bend your right elbow so that your right hand is no longer touching the mat, and just start to rotate either from your armpit or from your knee. People have different preferences, and start to massage out your right armpit with your right knee. A lot of times if I do this in my practice, the next day my armpit is like, what just happened? But it can be really nice. It's kind of like a little bit of myofascial release and just getting into some of the crunchies in there that we don't often become super aware of. So it's nice. And now you can go ahead and pause that motion, and we're going to reach for opposite elbows underneath our right leg. So we like to do this in our practice because it helps us make sure that we're really in our first floor, that we're super stable before we get into our second floor. Because if the base of our house is not working, if it's not stable and steady, it's not going to be very safe to be in the second and third floors. So once you've done that, on an inhale, you're going to reach your arms up. Your torso is going to come forward and up, and your right knee is going to continue to go forward as you do that. So you shouldn't feel any backwards motion in your legs. That's your trajectory. That's always going forward. You can reach for opposite elbows now that you're here, and feel for the stretch in the front of your left hip. This can be really opening in the front of our left hip on this side, especially if you're thinking about your right knee going forward. And then inhale to reach your arms up, interlace your fingers, and make a little cradle for your head again. So this is like what we did when we were standing on our knees, but we're just in a little different posture in our base this time. So take an inhale, reach your arms back up, and as you exhale, plant your hands, step it back to downward facing dog. And then you're gonna look forward, take an inhale breath, and as you exhale, step your left foot forward, second side here. So you're stepping to a 90-degree angle. You looked forward that time so that you really made sure you were able to get all the way where you wanted to go. You're gonna make sure that your left knee and left armpit have contact. You'll walk your hands out into the shape of a V up on your fingertips. And then you'll drop your back knee and untuck your toes. Bend your left elbow. We're going to take that same armpit opening that we took on the other side. So you can start to move your arm around or start to move your knee around. And this whole time, even though you are focused on your armpit here, you're continuing to think about that left knee going forward and always trying to find some sort of back bend. Then as you're ready, you can pause that motion and reach for opposite elbows underneath your left leg. Another thing that's really helpful and important to have balance here is that your legs are actually hip distance apart. So a lot of times we might step forward and our left foot will be in line with our right leg, and there's no way we can have stability if that is what's going on in our first floor. So make sure that you've stepped wide enough with your left leg. And then on your inhale, you'll reach your arms up. Your left knee continues to go forward. You're thinking about pubis, navel, sternum coming forward and up. Reach for opposite elbows overhead. Create a frame for your head, for your face. Opposite arm in front from what you did on the other side. Feel for the opening in the front of your right hip this time as you root down through the top of your back foot. And then inhale to reach your arms up. Create a cradle with your hands by interlacing your fingers, opposite thumb on top this time. And then you'll place your hands behind your neck, behind your head. Keep elbows shoulder distance apart and accentuate your back bend here. On an inhale, reach your arms up. And as you exhale, plant your hands, step it back to downward facing dog. Once you're back in your down dog, notice any shifts, any developments here. Can you feel a little bit more of a curve in your low back? How are your hips doing? How are your hips feeling? And then we're going to walk our feet to our hands and our hands to our feet into a forward fold in the middle of your mat. So we don't have a blanket or a pillow or anything to place underneath our heels today. So just know that things really are easier on a downhill slope. So this might be a little more challenging than it is when you have something to support your heels. So just have grace with yourself and bend your knees as much as you need to find contact between knees and armpits, and especially contact between belly and thighs. And we'll get contact right away here since we don't have a blanket. So we're going to place our hands, palms face up, going from the front underneath our feet. And this right away helps us feel a little bit more soothed. The fact that our feet are stepping on our hands, it's kind of like we're ironing out our back, because the backs of our hands or the tops of our hands, that's like our back. And so this is a really great way to get any kind of bulges out of your back, especially if that's something you experience when you do a forward fold. Keep your knees hip distance apart. Our knees can tend to go pretty close together, so keep them out to their own side. And then you can lift up your feet to release your hands. We're going to place our hands underneath our heels like balls in a mitt. So the heels are the balls and our hands are the mitt. So we're perfectly fitting ourselves. And this is so beautiful whenever we can use our practice to be reminded that we were designed to fit. We were designed to be able to fold ourselves in 2 or fold ourselves in 3, depending on how you look at it. So continue to breathe. Keep thinking about being pulled apart in all directions. So think about your heels being pulled apart, your elbows being pulled apart, your knees, your butt bones, your shoulders, everything going east and west, right and left. And this helps you find some space horizontally, which can help you find some space vertically as you lift your butt and lower your heels. And then release your hands and keep your knees bent as we start to roll up. Once you get to the top, inhale to reach your arms overhead. And as you exhale, release your hands by your sides, tuck your chin to your chest, take a breath in. And start to roll yourself down as you breathe out. Once you get to the bottom, reach behind your legs for your opposite ankle. And we are going to cross our arms so we can find a little bit more contact here in our forward fold. Then release your head and your neck. Try to even tuck your face into your legs. Keep lifting your butt, keep lowering your heels. And then swap which arm is on top. Continue here for just a couple more rounds of breath. Forward folds are such a great way for us to build our stamina. And then release your hands and we'll roll up one more time. Inhale to reach your arms up overhead. And exhale to release your hands by your sides, tuck your chin to your chest, take a breath in. And exhale to roll it down. We're going to walk our hands forward, walk our feet back until you're in plank pose. And then you'll send your hips high to downward facing dog. And notice any shift here. How did your forward fold help your down dog? Or did it not help at all? What sort of opening is happening here as you move, as you shift your energy? And then we're going to walk our feet forward to the top of our mat. And we're just going to roll ourselves up. So you're at the top of your mat, your feet are together. Your hands can come to your heart. And we're setting ourselves up to start our sun salutations. So for sun salutations, we're going to be kind of weaving ourselves together. And you'll end up seeing how this happens physically, but know that as you do things physically, that's also shifting things on the mental and emotional, spiritual level as well. And you're going to keep your feet together. Your hands will start at your heart, and we'll do the first couple rounds of our sun salutation nice and slowly so that you really know what's going on. So on your inhale, you're going to reach your arms up into the shape of a V. And as you exhale, your hands come back together and you forward fold. Your right foot steps back. Your inhale is a low crescent lunge. So you drop your knee, you untuck your toes, and you reach your arms up. Some people also take this as a high lunge, but we like to practice it with this low crescent lunge just because it gives us a little bit more control and a little bit more stability. So then you'll exhale to plant your hands and step it back to a down dog with your left leg crossed in front of your right. So every time you step back into a down dog in your sun salutes, you're going to have cross legs. And we're doing it pretty slow this time. So whichever foot is stepping back, that's going to go in front. So your left leg is in front. On your inhale, you shift forward into an up dog. And as you exhale, you send your hips high back to your down dog. Whichever leg is behind is now going to step forward. So your right foot steps forward to a 90-degree angle. You drop your back knee, you untuck your toes, inhale your arms, reach up. You're in your low crescent. And as you exhale, it's a forward fold, but your left leg will be crossed behind your right. So your left leg steps forward, and now you're crossed as you fold. On your inhale, your arms come up through center. You come into the shape of a V again with your hands. And as you exhale, your hands come back to center. So that was your first side, and your left leg is crossed behind your right. Inhale to reach your hands up into the shape of a V. Exhale to fold forward. Whichever leg is behind steps back. So your left leg steps back into a low crescent lunge as you breathe in. And as you breathe out, it's down dog with your right foot in front of your left, or your right leg rather, in front of your left. Your inhale is an up dog. And your exhale is down dog. So remember, your back leg steps forward. So your left leg steps forward to your low crescent lunge on your inhale breath. As you exhale, it's a forward fold. Plant your hands. Your right leg tucks behind your left. On your inhale, your hands come through center and your arms come up into the shape of a V. And as you exhale, your hands come back to center. So that was one complete sun salute. So we'll take it again, a little bit faster this time. On your inhale, reach your hands up into the shape of a V. Exhale, bring your hands together and forward fold. Your right foot steps back. Low crescent is your breath in. And as you exhale, it's down dog. Left leg crosses in front of your right. Inhale is upward facing dog, hips forward. And exhale is downward facing dog, hips high. Right foot steps forward. Breath in is your low crescent. Exhale is your forward fold. Plant your hands. Your left leg crosses behind your right. Inhale, your arms come through center. Stand up, hands in the shape of a V. And exhale, hands to your heart. Second side. Inhale, arms come up, shape of a V. Exhale, fold forward. Your left foot steps back. Low crescent lunge is your breath in. Exhale is down dog. Your right leg crosses in front of your left. Inhale is upward facing dog, hips forward. Exhale is downward facing dog, hips high. Left foot steps forward. Low crescent lunge is your breath in. Exhale is forward fold. Right leg tucks behind your left. Hands come through center. Inhale, arms up in the shape of a V. Exhale, hands to your heart. Lovely. So that was the end of our second round. Now we're going to take it a couple more times faster on the breath. So try to stay with it. If you get lost, no worries. We'll just be moving back and forth with our lunges. You can always skip using the crossing of your legs if it gets a little too complicated today. Just know that we are meeting you and you are meeting you where you are today. On your inhale, arms come up in the shape of a V. Exhale, fold forward. Your right foot steps back. Low crescent lunge is your breath in. Exhale is down dog with your left leg crossed in front of your right. Inhale is your upward facing dog. Exhale, downward facing dog. Right foot steps forward. Low crescent lunge. Inhale, breath. Exhale, forward fold. Left leg tucks behind your right. Inhale, hands come through center, shape of a V. Exhale, hands to your heart. Inhale, arms up, shape of a V. Exhale, fold forward. Left foot steps back, low crescent, breath in. Right leg crosses in front of left, downward facing dog. Inhale, upward facing dog, shift forward. Exhale, downward facing dog. Left foot steps forward, low crescent lunge, breath in. Exhale, forward fold, right foot tucks behind your left. Inhale, hands through center, arm shape of a V. And exhale, hands to your heart. One more time. Inhale, arms up, shape of a V. Exhale, forward fold, right foot steps back, low crescent, inhale, breath. Exhale, downward facing dog. Plant your hands, left leg crosses in front of right. Inhale, shift forward, up dog. Exhale, down dog, right foot forward, low crescent, inhale, breath. Exhale, forward fold, left leg behind right. Inhale, arms up, shape of a V. Exhale, hands to heart. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, fold forward. Left foot steps back, breath in, low crescent. Exhale, down dog, right leg in front of left. Inhale, upward facing dog. Exhale, downward facing dog. Left leg forward. Breath in, low crescent. Exhale, forward fold. Right leg tucked behind your left. Inhale, hands through center. Arms up. And exhale, hands to your heart. Nice job. You can uncross your legs. And we're just going to sit down onto our mat. So you can come to the back of your mat. And we're going to sit down, our legs straight out in front of us. You can have a bend in your knees. So we're ending with a seated forward fold today. And generally we would use blankets or something to place underneath our butt just to be on a downhill slope and help tilt our pelvis. But this practice is really just a reminder that we can do this practice even when we're on a trip or we don't have our props by us. So even though we won't be quite as supported, we still will be able to use our amazing body to fit ourselves and to find comfort. So do your best to be sitting up on your perineum. Bend your knees as much as you need to so that when you bend forward, they can fit into your armpits. And I like to keep my legs together when I don't have any props, just because then I have somewhere to rest my forehead and my face to release and fully relax into this posture, which helps calm the nervous system. So folding at your hip crease, you'll find contact with knees and armpits and forehead and shins, and your hands can reach for your feet. Now it's okay to have a little bit of a curve in your spine here, but only as long as your belly and your thighs have full contact. So you wouldn't want to have any space between your belly and your thighs and be rounding your back. And so sometimes that means that you have to bend your knees like literally more than 90 degrees, and that's okay. Because what we really care about here in a fold, what we really work with in folds is our hip crease. So it's really what we started with in our child's pose, getting into the first fold. And the reason that that's so important is because yoga is origami for our body. So if we're trying to build a beautiful paper crane and we get the first fold wrong, the crane is probably not going to look like a crane at all. The first fold in origami is the most important fold because it sets up everything else. And of course, we can always go back in life if we've made a choice or made a fold that wasn't exactly how it needed to be, and we can, shift it. We can undo the paper and start again. And so that's lovely to remember that there are second chances, there are third chances, there are infinitely many chances. But this is just a reminder in our physical space, which gives insights into all of our other realms, that we really, really want to be intentional about our first fold. So we'll take a couple more rounds of breath here. And then when you're ready, go ahead and grab for opposite elbows, and we're going to back bend to come up. So you'll think about your front body coming forward as you lift up. As you exhale, release your hands to your sides, and we'll take a simple twist here. So your right hand will come behind you, your left hand will come to your right knee, and you're trying to think about your chest coming forward and around so that you can turn your torso 90 degrees and your vision 180 degrees. And then you'll take it to the other side. So your left hand will come behind you, your right hand will come to your left leg. You're turning torso 90, vision 180, so you're looking over your left shoulder this time. You'll come back to center. And we're going to meet in the middle of our mat in hero's pose. So two options here. You can either have your toes untucked or tucked, just depending on which one is accessible to you right now. And you could also just do this last part of practice sitting in a chair if this is a hard posture for you to do without a block or some other support. And we're going to inhale to reach our arms up into the shape of a V, and we're going to finish with one round of pranayama. So we're going to have Kapalabhati Breath here with our hands in the shapes of cups. We've put so much effort into our practice that now we get to receive all of the grace from it. It's physical grace, emotional grace, mental grace, grace in the form of insights. So for Kapalabhati breath, you're going to take an inhale breath through your nose, and you'll take forceful exhales out your nose at a certain pace that I'll signal with my hands. So take an inhale through your nose, and then we'll exhale, 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 exhale. So you'll go at this pace, at the rhythm of my fingers. And we're not going to take too many breaths here. We're just going to count to about 50. So it's really nice. You can count in your head, and whenever you count in your head, it just soothes your nervous system because it gives it an end point. It tells you where you're going. It gives you something to look forward to. If this is really painful, it's something that you're like, oh, okay, I only have 15 left. And if it's something you're really enjoying, it just lets you know, okay, well, this is going to be over soon. And so it's just important to have kind of a vision of when things are going to shift in our lives, when we're going to have a transition. So take an inhale, hook your thumbs overhead, take 3 more sips through your mouth. Hold full. And then as you exhale, release your hands to your sides. Close your eyes. Spend a moment in gratitude for yourself and for the time you've taken in your practice today. Take an inhale breath and reach your arms up overhead. As you exhale, bring your hands to your heart. Namaste.